diversity. And I got back to her and said, that is huge. That is huge. I could speak on diversity for 2 days. So let's choose a topic. So we agreed to go for women in cooperatives on the basis that there are still issues in terms of equality for women in cooperatives, and we can't assume that because cooperatives seem nice safe spaces that they are always inclusive. Are you actually filming?
Yeah.
Travelling at the moment.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Is the light alright there?
Yeah, it's fine. No, it's fine.
You're going to edit this severely, aren't you? And you're only going to show my good side,
Yeah.
and you're going to miss all the bloopers.
Yeah.
Shall we start with a round of applause? Would that be...
Yeah, you can.
1, 2.
Okay, thank you. Right, so today I'm going to be speaking on diversity. So what is diversity? Why is it important? Why we're talking about it? And also trying to present the economic case for diversity as well, looking at the legal aspects of it and how we can build in diversity practices into our workplaces to create a more diverse and more economic workplace. So that is a brief outline of what we'll be talking about today. And as I was saying just a little earlier, diversity relates to a wide range of areas, and I have no intention of covering all of them today because it would not be possible in the very short space of time that we have. So we could go into many, many areas. Some of you will have heard me speaking on ethnicity before because you're aware that I used to be the chair of Co-ops UK's diversity panel, which was aimed at getting more people of colour into the cooperative movement, and that in itself is a huge topic. That was a 2-year project which had, I think, limited success, but as you can see it's just a tiny area of what we could talk about. Just a comment up there that I've put down ethnicity rather than race because that is my preferred description, in that in my eyes there is only one race, we're all humans. And so we're not talking about race usually, we're talking about ethnicity. So today we're going to be talking about women primarily. So from that list I had to choose. I chose gender, I chose to talk about women, women in the cooperative movement. And it's a weighty subject, but I've interspersed it with various things which I thought were funny anyway. Whether you do is another thing. But, this perhaps outlines the need for diversity. Once upon a time, indeed, being white, male and heterosexual was the default mode in organisations. Watch something from the 40s or 50s, kind of like all the Mad Men era. That is what was the norm. It's not now the case, but many organisations, like Uncle Willie, have yet to catch up with the fact that we need to move on from that. So why is it important? For so many reasons, really. It's about getting a good cultural mix. It's about getting the best out of people. It's because, essentially, a more equal society is better for everyone. And it's more interesting, I suppose, just to be quite frank. One of my favourite things to do, which has nothing to do with this presentation as such, is when I meet people, other people of colour, from Africa, from Malaysia, Singapore, or wherever else, I'll say to them, so what do you do with cassava then? It's a staple where I'm from in the Caribbean. What do you do with cassava? And I find out how they cook cassava. And it's just amazing just how many different ways there are of cooking cassava or yam or green bananas. And the point that I'm making is that there is diversity there's more interest in if you bring together different cultures, different viewpoints, interests and knowledge rather than just looking at one element. I was interested in the point here that was raised by a study which shows that mixed groups actually produce better decisions. We're all nodding because you might think, well, that should be simple, shouldn't it? You should be able to, that should be almost go without saying. But for a lot of organisations, they're still using the same groupings and wondering why they're not getting anywhere. We were just talking about an accountancy firm, and they are particularly in that mode. We know what happened in America, where everything was going wrong, and they knew it was going wrong, but they were working with the same small groups of people who actually didn't recognise it, didn't recognise that they were heading towards a crash, because there were no dissident voices in the room. And diversity is also about dissident voices. It's not always about agreeing, it's about disagreeing, and it's about allowing voices. So, many reasons why I believe diversity is important, and what it's about. It's about recognising differences, it's about being representative, it's about benefiting from new ideas, using fresh approaches, and attracting customers. It goes beyond saris, samosas and steel bands, which is one of the ways that, the equal opportunities approach. Oh yes, we had this wonderful event and the steel band was brilliant, and I learned how to tie a sari and how the samosas were delicious. That's not diversity really. That's trying, but it's beyond that. It's about meeting people's needs. That's the way that I see it. It's about recognising and meeting people's needs. So I do apologise if I'm trotting through this, but I did say that it was going to be, I need to be quick because I don't want to take the whole meeting. I think we're all finding ourselves. Yes.
I'm actually really hot. I don't know if it's me or the room.
No, I'm just right. Well, you're hot. What are you?
Okay.
Really?
It may just be us.
It's you
Yes. So as I said, it's about encouraging and harnessing differences, making services relevant, making them approachable. It's recognising that if you bring in people with different backgrounds, skills, attitudes and experience, it's going to bring fresh ideas to the organisation. And it's important that we address this in the co-op movement because it's living up to our values and principles. It's what we're built on. So it's important that we keep this at the forefront, that we don't just make assumptions and then think, well, yeah, we're the co-op movement, so of course we're doing this. Because I have to say, in my experience in the co-op movement over the last 30 odd years, it hasn't always been the case. And it is possible for negativity and non-diverse comments, beliefs to be promoted in cooperatives, just as in other organisations, although probably less so. And it's about, diversity is about, there is a strong business case for it. This is one of the things that I always push. It's not just about being nice to people and nice about people. It's about being good to ourselves. Because if we recognise the business case of diversity, then it helps to strengthen us as organisations. When speaking on when I was chair of the Ethnic Minority Diversity panel, one of the things that I often used to raise is that as a Jamaican, I can buy ackee and saltfish, which is part of our national dish. I can buy cassava and other stuff such as that in Tesco's and have been able to for years. But I've raised again and again and again that our local cooperatives do not stock these foods. And I'm not asking for them to be stocked necessarily in mainly white areas, but what about the areas where people of colour live? Why are they not there? Unfortunately, I can report that the Tesco's in the centre of Leicester, the very small Tesco Metro, actually has a substantial Jamaican section. And I can pop into there and I can get a tin of callaloo, which is like a green spinach vegetable. I can get ackee, I can get saltfish, I can get these food types, but not the co-op. So the Tesco's is actually recognising the diversity of the area that they trade in, and they are meeting the needs of that community by saying, yes, you, of course most of the time I just eat I don't know, normal brown bread, pizza, whatever everybody else eats. But once in a while, I want to be able to eat my own food, and I want to be able to just go to a shop and buy it. I don't want to have to be singled out. I don't want to have to go to a small ethnic minority shop in the sticks somewhere. I want to be able to just buy it. And I think it's good business practice. It's one of the things that I always say. If you can just cater for it. Basically, if I want ackee and saltfish, I will go to Tesco's. And I'm very sorry to say that on a cooperative recording, but that is the case. Because the cooperative is not recognising the business case for meeting the needs of its local communities. And I know that I've had complaints from local people as well when I've promoted the cooperative, which I do obviously as part of my job. And I'll say, shop in the cooperative. This is how it benefits you. This is how it benefits communities. This is how the cooperative is different from others. And I've had people, often Asian people, Chinese people will say to me, yeah, but they don't cater for me. They don't sell large bags of rice, for instance. We've asked them to sell large bags of rice, but they only sell them in like a kilo. We can't buy a kilo. That's an evening. We buy 50 kilos. Or 10 kilos would do. 10 kilos would last us for the month. But they don't do those. And so it's little things like this which can make the difference. When we're talking about diversity, sometimes we're only talking about small changes, but which make a major difference. Maybe if the co-op sold 10 kilo bags of rice, they would attract more Asian people who would shop in there, get that rice, get all the other stuff that we buy as well, the cornflakes, the peas, whatever, but attracted by the rice and the other stuffs which are in it. So there is a strong business case. I'm going to just skip through this one. It's just a diagram to show the difference between taking an equal opportunities approach and a diversity approach. The diversity approach is more focused on the individuals. It's more focused on outcomes. It's not about meeting the law. It's not about legislation. It's about recognising what is right and doing what is right, and also recognising that there is, as it says at the bottom, a very strong business case for doing so. In that if you meet the needs of people, recognise that they exist too, then you're going to benefit from that as a business. I always said that I would begin to feel at home in the UK when I saw black people advertising toilet paper. Which is me being facetious, but just recognising the fact that we exist and we use the same kind of things as other people. Peas and cornflakes and stuff like that. Not just a defined product, you know, which is a black product, but when it's a product which is just any other product, but it's a person of colour that's advertising it, that's when you know that you've made it, that you've actually become mainstream. So you have to make a lot of changes, I think, to be truly diverse. Well, when I say you, I mean organisations, many organisations find themselves in that position, that they have to make changes because diversity and inclusion is not the same thing. It's not enough to say, oh yes, we've got Winston on the packing floor and Wei Lim in accounts. You know, marvellous, Wei Lim brings in such nice food. That's not, that's different. It's not just about saying, look, we have these people. It's how do they feel? How are they involved? How are they welcomed in your business? Do they feel valued in the business? Do you understand them? Cooperatives will find that they probably have to make far less cultural changes to be diverse. And it's why I like co-ops, it's why I've worked in co-ops for the last more than 30 years, it's why I've stayed in cooperatives. It's because cooperatives offer so much more. They do offer diversity, often without even thinking about it. You know, I said earlier that I didn't want to teach you to suck eggs because I know everybody in this room. And I know that everybody in this room is a very agenda on the diversity agenda, that you've practiced it all your working lives, that you've sought to encourage others to recognise diversity issues and to make sure that they are actually put into practice and not just talked about in principle. So I know that because I know you, and I know that this is what we do in the cooperative movement, and I know that we are more likely to have work-life balance practices in place, family-friendly policies that will think about people. We will make It's important that people work, but we'll make sure that work isn't everything that they do and it doesn't take over their lives. Talking about the organisation where I work, because we're a cooperative ourselves, I know that we have had things in place since the early to mid 1980s, which only actually became law as late as 6 or 7 years ago. Since case started, we've always had paternity leave. Paternity leave only came into UK law a few years ago. We've always had paternity leave and adoption leave. We've always provided leave for domestic circumstances. We've always had enhanced maternity leave. We've had strong work-life balance policies, which means that if there's a reason you need to start work at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, you can start at 10 o'clock. We're not going to insist that you come into work before 9 just because that's the time that you're meant to start work. We've always had that kind of flexibility because we recognise that in doing that, we can attract a more diverse workforce. We can attract women who, by starting at 9:30 or 10, can take their children to school before they come to work. And by leaving at 3, can go and pick their children up en route. The 6 or so hours that they give to us in that day are enough. It's not about the quantity of hours, it's about the quality. And so we've always tried to make sure that we meet people's needs, whilst obviously, because we're a business, striving to meet our financial bottom line. And we have found that diversity has been good for us. It has meant that we have kept people who we would not otherwise have kept. We've kept skills within the organisation, we've kept the commitment of those people, and it has been worthwhile for us. The diversity for us is something which we just do, because that's what we do, but we also do it very strongly because it's a business case. For us, this was a particular issue in that for a long while we were not able to pay the going rate for our type of work. And we knew that this put us at a disadvantage when competing against other similar organisations. And one of the things that we were able to offer, which to many people was worth more than money, was very, very strong diversity and equality policies, very strong work-life balance policies, very strong family-friendly policies. And these were the policies, the procedures that we used to attract people to our organisation and to keep them. So for us, we could actually, if we were to sit down and think about it, we could actually put a monetary value on diversity and how being a diverse organisation has helped us to save money, helped us to attract staff, helped us to retain staff and to keep them. So, as I keep going on about, there is a business case. I'm not saying that's all we should look at. We're cooperatives and we don't look at things just in business units, and it's not just about talking about the business case. But I think sometimes when trying to convince others, it's necessary to talk about the business case. Today I said we're going to talk about women. In the cooperative movement, we're actually quite well represented, as indeed we are in this room. We're in the majority. And the cooperative movement has pretty much a 50-50 split. It depends on who you look at. Sometimes things that I read say there's actually more women than men in the cooperative movement. And so it's good, it's inclusive, it's a good structure, it attracts women to cooperatives. It certainly attracted me. From the very first when I heard about cooperatives and what they could provide, it was like a light bulb went on in my head. And that light bulb has never gone off. It has always shone brightly. I am as committed to cooperatives and as keen about cooperatives as I was when I first found out about them 30 odd years ago. And I know that I've progressed in ways in cooperatives that I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd been working in other types of organisations. I started off in my organisation as a development officer, was moved up to the deputy manager, now hold a CEO role. And I don't know if I'd have been able to do that in other types of organisations. Perhaps I could have done, because I'm quite determined and committed, but would I have been held down? Would I have been held back? Or would it have been an option? I have had encouragement, I've had commitment, I've had people dedicated to helping me to improve and to be the best worker I can. And I feel that cooperatives are a good place for women. And so I think, we should applaud ourselves for that. It's not all negative. I think there is the positives of that. I'm just going to skip through this. It's just the background to say that yes, we are protected as women in employment in so many ways, wrapped up now in the Equality Act 2010, which is meant to protect us and to make sure that we have our place in society as women. And whilst I've just eulogised cooperatives and said just how wonderful they are and how women can have a strong role to play in cooperatives, at the same time we need to recognise that this doesn't happen for all women, and it perhaps doesn't happen for all women within cooperatives as well. So the law is not enough to protect people because the law hasn't worked. The picture here is from 1968 when machinists were campaigning for equal pay because they were paid something like almost 40% less than the men that they worked with. But as you can see from the quote above, which is one from this year, nothing much has changed. We're still probably only getting around less than 85 pence in the pound for what we do. So I like that quote because it is, it's ironic, it's funny, it shouldn't be, but that is the case. So the impact over the last 40 years or so since the Equal Pay Act is that the gap used to be 36%, it's now 19%. So it's going down, but it's taken a long time. At this rate, it's going to take till 2050 for us to get equal pay. And the Fawcett Society calculates that women actually stop being paid from the first week of November each year. Last year it was 9th of November, the previous year it was the 4th of November. But around about that time is when we're working for free because that's their way of trying to show what that gap in salary means to women. So what's holding women back? A number of things. As I put there, a plethora of ceilings, a glass ceiling that you just can't. You can see that there's progress beyond that, but you can't get through it. You can see it. You can see the top, but you can't get there because the glass ceiling is holding you back. The concrete ceiling, which relates to black women, where you just ain't going to get there. It's just not. It's not sold to you. You're not getting through that ceiling. The bamboo ceiling, which applies to women of Chinese, Japanese, or Malaysian, Far East origin, where it's assumed, well, you don't do things like that, do you? We could actually put the Muslim ceiling as well, because that is one which I find really, really damaging, where I'm told, well, Muslim women don't do that, do they? They don't integrate, they can't come out of the house, they won't be able to attend this meeting, will they? Because their husbands won't let them, they can't let their faces be seen, they can't do this because of their religion. You'd be surprised, even in a city like Leicester, which is actually pretty much majority people of colour, we hear some quite stereotyped reasons why Muslim women cannot progress. I could have put the Islamic ceiling there as well and say, this is what stops women going forward. As well as the sticky floor, you just can't get your feet off the floor in the first place. You haven't been invested in educationally or otherwise to be able to get off. The sticky ladder, you're halfway there, but you can't go any further, you're stuck. The glass closet, in the fact that you're gay and you can't afford to come out of that closet and that's holding you back. Whilst researching this, I read an awful story. It wasn't about a woman, it was about a man. I think he led BP, or a major oil company, for 40 years. Did major things for the company. Throughout that 40 years, deflected all comments about why he didn't have a wife. Because of course, if you're a man in business, you get on further if you have a wife. If you're a woman, you get on, you don't get so far if you're married. But anyway, they were always wondering why he wasn't married. It came out after 40 years. He'd been in a very long-term relationship with a man, a long and happy, loving relationship. But when it came out, he felt that he had no choice but to resign. So he did. And I could not believe that somebody who brought so many billions of pounds into that organisation over 40 years, who headed it up, was forced to resign in this day and age because they found out that he had a male partner. And so, and it's bad enough for men, worse for women. So the glass closet is a terminology for women who feel that they cannot, they don't move forward because they're kept in a closet because of their sexuality. The glass cliff is where you're given projects where you're basically expected to fail and to be pushed off. Again, not using a female example, but you are in Leicester, and this is the week that we've just had a massive parade to celebrate winning the Premiership for the first time. We're not, we're so happy. So it goes 135 years. But not a female comparison, but Ranieri, when he was appointed, the bookies gave very short odds on him being the first manager to be dismissed in the season. He was not expected to get anywhere. I mean, Leicester barely escaped relegation last season. He comes in as the new manager, and he was on as far as they were concerned, they were giving odds that he would be the first one to be dismissed. He'd been given very much a glass cliff assignment there. He'd been given an assignment where he was expected to fail. Quite often when women pressurised to have assignments, they are given them, but they're given ones which will almost certainly fail. And when they fail, it's failed because they failed because they're female, not because of the fact that they weren't supported, the assignment was undoable in the first place, etc. The glass elevator is not from a Roald Dahl story, but it's quite similar in that it allows you to whiz past other people who are taking the stairs. The glass elevator is basically a terminology about men who are elevated in positions, leaving women behind, even in situations where women predominate. So a very one to illustrate it with is the fact that the majority of primary school teachers are female, but the majority of primary heads are male. So they've been glass elevated right to the top. So what holds women back? Lots of things. Negative assumptions, lack of career development, lack of mentoring. I am very, very, very much into mentoring. I think that mentoring makes a huge difference for women. And I think that all women should seek to get a mentor from outside of their workplace, and sometimes from outside of your industry. You need sometimes just to be able to talk to people who don't know necessarily about your industry, and therefore can take what you say at face value and look at it objectively. I think mentoring is very important for women. I have benefited from mentoring. I think one of the very first people who ever mentored me was Jane Scullion, who some of you will know, who used to be at Coventry CDA, who was a very strong force in my life. I was absolutely terrified of her, but that's another point. Absolutely terrified of Jane when I first knew her, but she was a very, very strong mentor for me. She saw what was within me, and she teased that out, and she helped me to believe in myself and to make plans. And I've tried to put that back. I feel it's very important to put back what you have received. And I mentor women myself. At the moment, I'm actually mentoring a man. One of my clients who came to me and said, I would like you to mentor me. 35-year-old father of two, wants to go further in his personal, professional and social life, and wants to basically work with somebody to achieve his ambitions. And so I meet with him once a month, and we have a mentoring program that we work through. But in the main, I work with women, and there's pretty much all the time when I'm working with a woman to mentor them, usually they've approached me and said, can you mentor me? And this is something I do in my own time because I believe in it very strongly. And what's the payback? Somebody said to me, how can I pay you back? And I said, you can pay me back by passing it on, because that's my payback. I'm paying back. There are so many things which hold women back, not least having wombs. Nigel Farage said that we're a drain on companies, and of course companies are going to prefer to have men because we're just too expensive having babies. We don't have babies by ourselves, incidentally. It takes two, usually, and that should be recognised. And yes, we are going to have babies. That's what we do. I've had 2 babies, yeah. But at the same time, I've developed to become the CEO of my company. I've done a Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development qualification. I actually came top of my year when I qualified. I have trained to be a teacher. I've done an ILM. I have done a lot of things. I have worked, I've developed co-ops. Yes, and 2 babies along the way. Popped them out, came back to work. Yeah, not quite, but what I'm trying to say is that it shouldn't define who we are. It's not everything that we're about. So what else holds us back? Lack of stretch assignments, not being expected to do very well. Lack of role models, as we've mentioned before, not seeing anybody there. Sometimes I'm surprised that I do what I do, because when I was growing up I didn't think I could do anything very much, because nobody ever told me I could. In fact, they told me the opposite. They told me I could not do it. I didn't learn to swim for many years until I was an adult, because I was told that black people can't swim. Our bones are too heavy, we'll sink. I was told you're not good at maths. Asian people are, but not your people. You're very good at running. And it didn't help matters at all, but in fact I was very good at running. I was a very good sprinter. I was very good at 1, 2 and 400. Nothing else above that, but at that level, unbeaten throughout my secondary school career. So I would line up, and the other girls would look left, look right, see that I was there, and know that I was going to win. I was never beaten in 5 years of running for my school. But what I also remember about that is that I got to about the age of 15, and I realised I needed to concentrate on my O-levels, as they were then, GCSEs now. And so I told my gym teacher, who was also my trainer, that I couldn't be pulled from double maths or science anymore to run around the track in preparation for a competition on the Saturday. I couldn't use my evenings trying to shave seconds off my time, that I needed time for my O-levels. And she said, no you don't. She said, you're going to be the next Sonia Lanneman. You won't need O-levels. And I don't know if you remember Sonia Lanneman. I actually looked her up last night. I thought, is she still around? And she is. And I found out, oddly enough, that she was a bridesmaid at Tessa Sanderson's wedding 6 years ago. So there you go. She's now 60 years of age, Sonia Lanneman. She was number 2 in the world at the time when I was at school in the late 70s. And she was the one that everybody aspired to be. But I knew that I could not be Sonia Lanneman. I was good at local level, but not that good. And I didn't wish to be that good, actually. It wasn't where I wanted to go. But she said to me, you don't need O-levels, you're going to be the next Sonia Lanneman. And I said, I do need O-levels, I want to progress to O-levels. And when she realised that I was going to drop out of the track squad, she called me a nasty, ungrateful girl and told me I'd never amount to anything. So the only role model...
Where is she now?
I don't know. I really don't know. But the only role models, I didn't have role models. If I had role models, they were negative ones. Sonia Lanneman was a positive role model, but she was a role model for my gym teacher who was built just on running. But as a sprinter, I knew that I'd be finished before I was 30. Sprinters, short bursts, you finished really by 30, and I knew I'd need something else for the rest of my life. So I didn't have role models, and I think it's essential that women in business have role models, see other women who are doing things, and that they know that they can look up to and say, that's where I can be in 10 years' time, or 15 years' time. So lots of other things that hold people back. Lack of family-friendly policies is one that I would zone in on, and the fact that they need to be there for women and men. It's not about women. Often when you read in the press or you look at, you talk to companies about their policies, they're talking about women. As I said earlier, it takes two usually to have a baby, and so the policies should be there for men as well. Just briefly, what's holding black women back? Pretty much the same as on the previous 3 slides, but also extra ones such as my friend Gina, who is a lawyer, a very proficient lawyer, who was asked to accompany a client, walked into the room, the other party shook her client's hand and said, "Lovely to see you, but I thought you were bringing your lawyer with you." And to which Gina's client turned and said, "Yes, I am. Here she is." So it's just the kind of thing she feels, she accepts that. She says, "This will happen to me at least once a month. People will not believe that I'm a lawyer." We have even fewer role models and mentors, the concrete ceiling that I mentioned before, lack of pay. A lot of this you might think, well, you know, this is women per se. I mean, this is the co-op movement. Well, we have to ask ourselves, well, is it the co-op movement? Are we promoting these aspects within the co-op movement? Are there things that we could be doing better? Can we be sure that in every co-op shop, women are going in with a bounce in their step every day thinking, this is great. You know, we've got great family-friendly policies. As a black woman, there's no concrete ceiling above me. As a gay woman, I don't have to be in a closet. I can make my views known. They are respected. I can be understood. I feel part of this organisation. And I have to ask whether we can 100% say that is true of the cooperative movement, of the co-op shops, of worker cooperatives, housing, credit unions, everything else. And I'd say it'd be very unlikely that it's true. Not because we're awful, we're actually very much better than most other sectors, but it's not likely to be true because it's a very hard thing to do, and it's something which we always have to keep on top of. We'd like to think that things change. This was in 1993. Somebody denied partnership on the basis that she didn't walk like a woman or wear enough makeup and jewellery, even though she was the top candidate in her company. So obviously the key to success is a pair of these, isn't it? That's what you need in order to go further. And I'm not being totally facetious because, as Angela made reference to a little earlier, or I think what is either Angela or Tanya, this is what happened. Just last December, someone was sent home from work because she wasn't wearing shoes that looked like that. She was wearing flatties, and they said, "You can't work here and be professional in flat shoes." I can't see where wearing shoes affects a woman's intellect, except to make you, well, it doesn't affect you at all, at all. Wearing high heels, I think, might affect you if you're in a meeting or at an event or something, because all you're thinking about is your feet rather than what you should be saying or doing. So it's not going to affect you in your work, but it is still a policy. I have a friend who started work at an accountant's. I won't mention them, I won't name them, they're up the road, just up the road from here in Leicester. And on day one, she was taken aside and said, "You're wearing trousers. I thought we should let you know that we don't think that trousers are seemly for women in this organisation. And, you know, you perhaps ought to consider a different method of dress." This was some years ago, but not that many years ago, to make that acceptable.
Unfortunately, this case of this woman with the heel shoes on, the policy was, well, actually was carried out by a woman. That's the unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, and that is one thing which I haven't mentioned, Jenny.
Yeah.
Hi, Jenny. It is an unfortunate thing, Jenny, and I didn't mention it because when researching this,
Yeah.
and this whole area. One of the things which was raised again and again on forums and in articles is that often the policies are carried out by women.
Yes, yeah.
And that's one of the things that we have to question about ourselves. Why are we putting ourselves down? Why have we got a policy which says that in order to be professional, you need to wear high shoes? Maybe you can't wear high shoes, or maybe you just don't want to. Maybe you don't want to have bloodied feet. If you actually look into this area, there are whole forums on it, including people who show pictures, paste pictures on forums of their bloodied feet when they've been forced to operate for 9 hours in high-heeled shoes. And they're quite horrible. And you think, how can you have a job where you end up at the end of the day with your feet in tatters? And how can that actually be put forward by a woman? So I do take on board your point, because that has been raised in a lot of the forums, that it's women who are promoting this sometimes. And are we promoting this because we've absorbed and swallowed this rhetoric, which says this is what it takes to be feminine? And maybe we've all been, I'm not going to speak for us all, but I know that I've been out in 6-inch stilettos. And I can't believe I ever did that I went out dancing in 6-inch stilettos. And I think to myself, why did I do that? Well, if somebody says, can I bind your feet and cripple you for culture, you say, that's barbaric, absolutely barbaric. But if somebody says, can I sell you these 6-inch high stilettos which you will wear to a dance, and you will dance all night in them and hobble back, a bit like the mermaid in the Hans Christian Andersen story when she had to walk over broken glass. If somebody said that, you'd say no, but we do it to ourselves. So it is an issue. And when I'm talking about these issues, it's not about man blaming, it's not about anything like that. I'm trying to present it objectively and factually, but it is important, the fact that Jenny raises, the fact that lots of the time it's women who will hold you back, it's other women who will be dismissive of you, it's other women who will say, this isn't right. And I'll come to this in a little bit actually. Again, just a bit of levity. A story that Julia Roberts takes her shoes off. This was front page on Monday. That her shoe, but look at the shoes, for heaven's sake. I would take those off. I mean, they're ridiculous. You were not meant to wear something that looks like that. And they look painful just to look at. And she just couldn't wear them anymore. She didn't want to ascend the stairs in them. She took them off. It made front page news. But this is a non-news story. This bloke was fed up of the fact that his co-worker, his female co-presenter, got negative emails on almost a daily basis about what she wore. And, as Jenny pointed out, the majority of them came from women. They did not come from men. Men might have said, nice top today, but women, they would slate her. No matter what she wore, she was slated. And it didn't matter whether she was reporting on war, famine, disaster, or good news, that seemed to be go by the by because they would comment on her top. So he decided to wear the same blue suit every day for a year. Had it dry cleaned at the weekend, put it back on Monday. Nobody noticed. After a year, he revealed what he'd done. He'd not had a single email, telephone, or letter over that year to say you wear the same suit every day. All you do is you change your shirt and your tie, but you've worn the same suit. But his co-worker would have many emails from women saying, you wore that top before, or that top doesn't suit you, it makes your boobs look too big, or whatever. So, yeah, we do have, sometimes there is a fifth column, the enemy within, and we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware it's not men sometimes, it's us, and we've got to address that. So, moving on then, how can the co-op movement take positive change to make positive change? As I've said before, we already do very well in so many areas, but there's lots more that we can do. We can provide training to staff at all levels to make sure that they understand diversity. It has to come from the top, and it cannot be lip service. Diversity doesn't work if the women on the shop floor well, it can work if the women on the shop floor come together and say, right, we need to do this to make a more diverse workforce. But if they're squashed from the top, not allow the facilities, the time, the resources to be able to create a diverse workforce, it is not going to be very effective. Diversity works best when everybody, the chief executive officers and everybody at the top has said, yes, this is how we are going to be a better, stronger, more viable, more profitable organisation, and this is how we're going to put it into place, and this is how we're going to get everybody on board. So you've got to get it so that everybody is in the organisations involved, but it's imperative that there is commitment from the top. You need to provide childcare and elder care. I remember when I first started the cooperative movement, childcare was mandatory at the co-op conferences. Yes, Jenny's nodding. Yeah, we were all nodding because
got on with it.
Yeah, there was always a creche, always lots of children around, and it was just accepted that if you arranged an event, you arranged childcare, because how could you expect people to come there readily if you did not do so? Everybody around the table who's nodding, we now have children, I think, who are probably in their 20s at least, 20s, 30s. So, and we may have, some of us may have dependent children, but we probably also have dependent elders. We're part of what they call the sandwich generation, where we're sandwiched by childcare needs, but also by elder care needs. And so that needs to be provided to enable people to access whatever it is you're asking them to come to, the members' meeting, the board meeting, or indeed maybe to work. Maybe you should be looking at what could be done with salary sacrifice vouchers, etc., to help people to be able to manage their care commitments whilst also coming to work. Another issue that I would argue for is about nurturing homegrown talent, not about using the resources that are there, the talents that are there, rather than winging in someone from a posh organisation or some private organisation outside who comes promising to wave a magic wand, but doesn't necessarily understand the culture and doesn't necessarily deliver what they said that they would. I am a believer in nurturing and using homegrown talent and using the women who are in the organisation, making provision for them, training them, mentoring them, providing role models, helping them to grow and develop within the organisation so that they can then move forward, perhaps run the organisation rather than somebody from Ulster, with no disrespect to Ulster. But why are we bringing in people from Ulster? Have we not got women in our movement who can be doing the work? We need to raise the profile of cooperatives amongst young women and well, young people generally, but aiming at women, to say it's a good place to work. You can grow in here, you can develop. You need to show innovative cooperatives led by women and produce case studies so that women and girls can find out about cooperatives. I didn't know about cooperatives until I left university, but I wanted to know about cooperatives when I was about 19. When I was 19, I worked for the GPO, which tells you my age. Yes, I worked for the GPO, which then became British Telecom. And I remember, it wasn't dreadful working for the GPO, it was quite a paternalistic organisation, it was fine, but I remember thinking, there has to be another way to work. I want to change the way I work. There has to be a way to work where I'm not a tiny cog in a large machine, a way where my views are listened to, where I feel that what I'm doing is socially acceptable and socially useful. There has to be a way where I have more involvement, where there's more democracy. And I remember thinking that at 19, working for the GPO, and thinking, I've got to work for at least another 40 years. I don't know if I want to work in this kind of structure for 40 years. What else is there? But I did not know of another structure. I didn't know about cooperatives. I left the GPO, I went to university, I did a good degree, I came out and I fell into cooperatives almost by accident when some friends came and said, would you like to help us to set up a bookshop cooperative? And I said, what is a cooperative? They told me, and a light went on in my head. And I said, you can do that? You can work in that way? And they said, yes. I was, I think, 22, 23, and I've worked in the cooperative movement ever since. But what strikes me is the fact that I could have missed that entirely. It was purely by chance that I found out that there was another way of working. We need to take the message into schools, into colleges. People should be taught about it at university. Jane and I, working for CASE over the last 6 years or so, we've been working very strongly with the University of Leicester, promoting and delivering 2 ERDF projects, which have been partly about working with students in the University of Leicester across all disciplines to let them know that there is another option. You can change the way you work. Our strapline at CASE is change the way you work, because so many people come to us and say, we like what we do, but we don't like the way we do it. How can we change the way we work? And so many people stumble their way towards us, but I feel that we need to have a much stronger cooperative element within schooling so that people don't have to find out about it by accident and actually know that there is another way of working. We're the best kept secret ever. So some of it is simple. I said I didn't want to teach you to suck eggs, so things like use positive imagery. You'd think that that was simple. But when I was the chair of the Co-ops UK panel, I'd be asked to give advice. People would bring me their adverts and things and say, we try and attract women, and we try and attract black people, but we don't get any. And I'd look at the adverts and the language they were written in, and think, well, yeah, not surprisingly. Look at their publicity, and I'd say, you've got a photo here, a nice photo, but it's all men, it's all white men. Yeah, it was the best photo we had. And you're wondering why you can't attract women? Well, does it matter if they're not in the photo? Yes, it does, because what you're saying is, we don't mean you, we mean him, we mean that white man. We don't mean you, that's why we've not put you in the photo. Oh, I didn't think that was necessary. And that might sound like I'm being flippant, but that's a précis of real conversations I've had with people running cooperative retail societies, running shops, and saying, we don't think we get enough black people in here. We don't think that, I mean, I just used the example of women, but when I was talking to them, it was about black people. We don't think we get enough black people in here. Why do we not get black people when we're situated within an area where where lots of black people live? And I would look at what they had on their shelves, look at their adverts, and say, well, you could help. It could help if you just put a black person in your picture, in your adverts, or if you had some black people working here. Simple things. So whilst not wanting to teach you to suck eggs, I know that these are real life conversations that I've had, and it's really quite horrifying sometimes. Need to raise awareness, we need to be aware of what we're doing at all stages from recruitment, we need to target women, monitor the programme, we need to make sure that once we get the women we retain them, build excellent work-life balance for men and for women, provide mentoring and support, provide role models, help women to be able to progress in the organisations. We need to develop organisations that empower and allow women to influence change, take control, have a voice, develop their confidence to be the best workers they can, and introduce key performance indicators so that we can assess what we're doing throughout. So it's not just something, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not just taken as said, we can actually validate what we do at all stages. Women can typically fail at every stage here. It's a block for women. Every single stage, attracting them in the first place, how they're treated at interview, how they're assessed, whether or not they are offered promotions or bonuses. Everything, every one of those is a potential stumbling block to women. And people will say, but we have parity, we have equality. Women can apply just like anybody else. Women have the chance for promotions just like anyone else. But it doesn't necessarily work out that way. And whilst I don't argue necessarily for special measures, I would say that actually we do need to take some special measures sometimes and say, okay, what do we need to do here? Typically, men will come and ask for a promotion. women will not. Typically, a man will apply for a job if he satisfies 50% of the criteria. A woman will want to satisfy 100, and she won't apply unless she does. And you need to say to people, you don't need to have all these attributes. We want some of these are essential, others are just desirable. Apply anyway, allow us to interview you and see if you are the right person for us. But you can lose women before they even get to you, because research after research has shown that women will not apply for jobs unless they feel they meet all the attributes, whereas men will apply for them. I used to be the chair of a black woman centre which had exemption to appoint women and women who were black. So everybody who was appointed there was a black woman, because that's what the centre did. And each and every time that we recruited, we got applications from white men who said, I can do the job. And we'd say, but you don't have the attributes. Yes, I do. I can do the job. And they would be very surprised that they weren't looked at. I mean, we can go into the ins and outs of that, whether or not you should have black women centres, etc., etc., etc. But the point that I'm making here is that it never deterred white men from applying. They just felt that they could do it. Make sure that women are listened to. This is a very common process whereby a woman will say something, nobody listens to it, a man says it, and that's an excellent suggestion. Why have we never thought of that before? It was thought of, but it was said in a feminine voice and you didn't listen. So in order to get progress, you need to make sure there is actually the space and the facility for women to be listened to, and that what they say is acted upon. Support women. I stole that from Congress, I think that was, a couple of years ago. So support women and make sure that that they're listened to. Allow them to support themselves in the workplace and externally. One of the things that I remember about my introduction to the cooperative movement was how much peer support there was, how much peer learning we did and peer support in the early days at Beechwood, at ICOM, at the various conferences, the women's networks, the regional networks, the black network. It was all about supporting each other. And I really do feel that we would not have got as far if we hadn't had those support networks. Those networks, I think, were essential for us in those early days when we were feeling our way as a cooperative movement, as a cooperative development movement, and when we needed support, and we got that support from each other, not just in terms of the women networks, but in terms of the wider networks, the regional, national networks that we use. So I think support is a very strong issue that we should be promoting. So we need to build transparency, we need to make sure that we encourage storytelling. I think that's an important aspect. Talk to women, let them know that it's not just them. Let them know the history, let them know the struggles, and let them see role models. Let them know it wasn't necessarily easy for those role models either, but that they can move forward in that way. And actually suggest that women apply for roles. I said that one of the ways that women fail, or one of the barriers potentially to women, is that women tend not to apply for promotions. And that is the same within cooperatives as it is anywhere else. And so you need to encourage women to apply for roles. You need to recognise them, to train them up, to prepare them so they're in place when roles come, and offer development programmes so they feel strong enough to apply for those. The last comment is actually from Ursula, who I know you all know. It says the next layer up should make you feel that you are welcome there. That comment has been taken from a piece of research which is currently being done by somebody called Natalie, who I'll reference at the end, and who assisted me with some of this presentation. And she interviewed Ursula, and I liked that comment. And I think that Ursula's awesome in what she does, but then Ursula still feels that this is an issue, that you need to make sure that the next layer up if you're going to promote women, they've got to feel that they are welcome on that board or wherever it is. You can't have them feeling that that they're excluded once they get there. So I put together a 12-point plan for diversity action, which I'm not going to go through in detail. Much of today is about action to take away with you. I knew it was a short time I had, which I've already exceeded, so I didn't intend to go through all of these things, but I put things together just as a reminder, really, ending with share good practice. I think sharing good practice is what we're about in the co-op movement. And I just very suddenly got to the end then. To the end, and I said that I mentioned Natalie. Natalie Bradbury works for the Cooperative College, and she's currently researching women in cooperatives and is still, I think, looking for women to speak to. So if you want to speak to her about your experiences as a woman in cooperative, or if you want to offer comments, if you want to talk about expand on anything that I've talked about today, then that's Natalie's contact details. I spoke to her because I wanted to discuss some of this with her, and some of the wording in here has also been Natalie's, so I said that I would acknowledge that. And so contact Natalie if you'd like, and Natalie's research is being presented at Congress, so you will see it there. She's doing a presentation feeding back on the role of women in cooperatives, the barriers to women in cooperatives, and how to build diversity. So I've tried not to cover the same ground that she is going to do, in case you're at Congress and you want to go and see her presentation. But I did feel the need to acknowledge her. Further to I've put further to the presentation, I'm not going to go through these, I just put in some examples of strong female-led cooperatives in Leicester. It's not imperative that they start with an S, but I noticed that all three of them do. But I thought you might want to, you could look up any of these. I've given you contact details for them. If you want to talk to cooperatives where I feel that they have addressed all these issues that we're talking about and continue to address them. Even though I've put Sunflower in and realised that I've talked about female-led cooperatives and realised that Sunflower is led by a bloke. But in no way, this is what diversity is about. I've said diversity. I've focused on women for this, but I started off by saying diversity is a wide area, and diversity is about diversity for everybody. Gary Blockley, who is the manager of Sunflower, said to me, I never thought I'd be able to do this. I just thought I was a thick working class lad from an estate, and people like me don't do things like this. He said, I'd never thought I could be trained up to work in be part of a workers' cooperative, and in the end be the manager of a workers' cooperative. And actually it's a community cooperative. And it's an award-winning cooperative. It's one which, when they had their Ofsted, their last but one Ofsted, they achieved outstanding in every single area. A very, very rare occurrence. The inspector said that she'd been an inspector for 20 years and she'd only ever given that rating twice. So it's an award.
Where are they based?
They're based in Braunston. It's about 3 miles from here. There's a purpose-built leisure centre in Braunston, and the nursery was purpose-built at the same time as the leisure centre. It's attached to the leisure centre. And Sunflower came about because Braunston, there'd been lots of regeneration in Braunston, but people were not picking up the work and educational opportunities that were there. They were concerned as to why that was the case. They did a survey and found out it was because there was not a nursery on the estate. It's a large estate and there was nowhere for children to be minded. And so they came to Case and said, can you help us with this? We worked with Sure Start and with the Braunston Foundation for 2 years to start this nursery. We worked, a lot of the people who run the nursery had no previous experience, We met with them every other Monday night for much of 2 years to develop the plan and to build in time for them to go to the local college to gain childcare qualifications, etc., so they were ready to start the nursery. This is actually, I don't know why I put 60 there because that is completely wrong. It's actually 90 plus children they look after, so I don't know, I think that was a slip of my finger. It's 90 plus children that they look after every day, and the membership is primarily female. I think they have Scott and Gary as males, but again, that is part of diversity, the fact that 2 blokes can work in a nursery, because it is very, very rare to find men in a nursery. And Gary is out and proud, so you won't mind me saying to you, that he's a gay man as well. And for a gay man to be in charge of a nursery, I think, is a measure of diversity. And the fact that parents support Gary, and when somebody tried to make a slur campaign against him based on his sexuality, all the parents, all the staff rallied around him and saw them off and said that has nothing to do with anything. What matters is whether or not Gary is a good manager, and he's an excellent manager. So yes, if we were to talk about diversity, we could talk about it from so many different angles, but I'm going to stop there, and thank you very much for listening, and hope that it's been of interest and that you've gained information you can take away with you. So thank you.